Welcome back to the Empowering Minds Mental Health Podcast, where we explore resilience, healing, and hope in the face of life's most difficult challenges. Today, my special guest is AJ Coleman, author of Keep Those Feet Moving. After facing the heartbreaking loss of his wife due to brain cancer, AJ found himself navigating deep grief while raising their young daughter. He's here to share his powerful story and the strategies that helped him and that can help others find their way forward. AJ, thank you for agreeing to come on today.
Great. Thank you for having me. Hello, everyone.
All right. So we're just going to get right into it. All right. So, AJ, for those who are newly grieving and feel completely lost, what would you say is the most important first step to take when beginning to deal with coping skills with grief?
Well, first and foremost, anybody who's in grief, my condolences, and you come to the right place. First and foremost, what we want to do is understand why we're here today,
Mhm.
why we're in grief. And there's a principle that I like to coin is the why and where principle. Some people say why and how, but
Mhm.
when you're grieving, you're really talking about why. Why did this happen? Why me? Why this person? Why did this come about now? Things were going so great. And
Mhm.
when you're in grief, you're asking a lot of questions to yourself and to others. Why? Why? Every W is why. And anytime you come into grief, the first and foremost concern is really the loss of physical touch, especially it's whether it's the loss of a loved one, loss of a job, loss of companionship, it's that physical touch. And that's what's missing so much from that entire present. And that's what people hold on to is that physicalness. So that's usually the first step is to recognize what stage you are in. The longer you stay in the why, the longer you stay in grief and the harder to take steps forward. That's why I like to use the where principle. Where am I going next? Where do I get to go? Where do I go to find comfort? Where do I go to get resources? There you're taking necessary steps for self healing, self reflection. You may not be able to change what happened, but you can choose how you move forward.
Is a good coping skill. I guess I just never really thought of it that way, going from why to where. That's where now when you're in that where stage, is that I guess maybe kind of like the onset of healing, or would you say is that kind of like uh determining like the root cause or a little bit of both?
That's an interesting question. The way I look at the where is thinking about action, creating motion.
Okay.
And anytime that you're creating some sort of action and motion, you're not standing still, you're doing something.
Mm-hmm.
And in grief, many times we just stand still. We're numb. We can't think. We can't understand what's going. We can't look ahead to the future because we don't know what that looks like at that time.
Mm-hmm.
And the action that you create promotes curiosity, promotes healing, because you're starting to do something. You ever notice when you're watching a clock how time goes by very slow?
Yes, it does.
But if you're not watching the clock because you're busy, you look at it and you're like, wait a minute, 2 hours went by. What just happened?
Right.
That's the beauty of the creating motion. And that's where are you going? Where do you get those resources? Where do you find happiness?
Mm-hmm. That is a good concept. And I hope that the viewers who watch this later on really key into that because a lot of people, I can speak for myself, when I lost my father and loved ones, I was in the standstill for a long, long time. And it took me a while. But I guess I did eventually transfer to the where, but I guess I just didn't, apply any type of terminology for it. But I felt it was best for me at that time when I was in the where. I, started reaching out for different resources with counseling and things like that to kind of help me navigate, because that was like that was probably at that time the biggest, or one of the biggest losses that I had ever had, and it was too much. It was my son's his grandmother in July, his great grandfather in August, and then my dad in December. So it was back to back, and it was just too much for me to navigate. So I hope they really key into that. All right. So next I wanted to ask you about, what advice do you have for people struggling with intense emotions such as guilt or anger after losing a loved one? And how can they maybe kind of um, start to manage some of those ways to feel, or I guess what I'm trying, manage their feelings in a more healthier way besides, like, with anger?
Another great question. When we first go into grief, there's a lot of emotions that come
Hmm.
through. A lot of those emotions also have regrets, things that we didn't say,
Hmm.
things that we didn't do, things that we hadn't spent our time doing.
Hmm.
And there are different types of loss. There's loss like from an illness that you can not necessarily prepare for,
Hmm.
but you know it's coming at some point and you're able to make new memories, you're able to spend quality time. And then there is sudden loss where it's unexpected, there is just no really preparation.
Hmm.
And depending on where you're at in the grief, is finding where that acceptance is and accepting the loss itself, that there was nothing that you could have done to
Hmm.
prevent it. There isn't anything that you might have been able to say going back. And when people are in that regret, in that emotional state, thinking about what they could have done, how they should have done it, it's very emotional,
Hmm.
which is why I like to tell people, if you didn't get a chance to tell your loved one what you wanted to say, or a friend, or anything else, take a photo, go find something that held significant importance to you, to them, and just speak freely. Loss is about closure. It's about finding new ways to accept what has happened, but also taking that closure that you can move on, not forgetting,
Right.
but what I call celebrating. You're carrying on that legacy, you're carrying on certain traditions, and that way you can look back with very fond memories. And
Hmm.
your emotions, we're human. Emotions are a part of who we are. It means that you care, it means that you're hurting. But the greater the emotions, the greater you are closer to your self discovery of moving forward step by step.
I wish I had known some of these coping skills many years ago. And you are right, they are different types of grief. And I think maybe within the last year or two, one of my friends was talking about grief and the different types of grief. And she mentioned about how she was grieving. And I'm thinking she was like someone that had passed away, but no, she said that she was grieving. She had been married a number of years and she had divorced. And I had never thought about, wow, she's grieving a divorce. I never put that together, but yeah, she had to go through a process with that. So you are right. There are different types of grief. And so
It's
yeah, I I want to talk to you a little bit. Um in your book, you discuss handling panic attacks. Do you have any techniques or tools that you found most effective? And then after that, I definitely want you to kind of tell a little bit about your book if you would like, as far as where it's available or any information you want to talk about your book.
Panic attacks. I never even heard of a panic attack when it was first diagnosed. I thought I was having a heart attack at the age of 20. And at the time in my life, I had gone through a very stressful situation where there wasn't anybody I could talk to about what happened. And it
Mhm.
just kept building and building and building. And then one day it just burst.
Mhm.
And when the doctor said, well, you're having a panic attack, I thought it was a made up word. I'm like, what are you talking about? My heart is beating out of my chest. I can't think. I'm flush and everything. And afterwards, I read a book called The Anxiety Disease. It's a pretty renowned book, and it gave me a lot of insights into what a panic attack is, what are some of the symptoms that causes it, and a little bit of tips on how you could at least manage it.
Mhm.
Panic attacks, unfortunately, I don't think ever go away entirely, but they can be managed with
Mhm.
care, control, obviously, with the doctor's care as
Mhm.
well. But those that go through panic attacks, understanding what has led to that panic attack in the first place. Usually there's an event that occurs that triggers that panic attack. Now, if you
Mhm.
don't know what triggers it, what happens is you may be prone to additional panic attack. Because if you're like me, once you have that first panic attack, you become fixated on when the next panic attack is coming, and
Mhm.
it comes, and then you have it, and then you worry about the next one. The next one is it really a different thing? And recognizing what are the primary trigger points and looking for ways to what I call offset them. You can't avoid them, but you could put yourself in a better position to manage it. If you know going through a crowd of people at a concert is uncomfortable and it gives you anxiety, it's perfectly okay to tell your close friend, I'm sorry, I'm not comfortable in this large setting.
Mhm.
And you remove yourself from that. It's not like you're hiding, it's not like you're doing other things. It's just you're recognizing what a potential trigger may be. Always, panic attacks are scary,
Mhm.
but it just means your body is reacting to something. And most times, it means you're healthy. It means that perhaps it's time to open up and talk to somebody, whether it's professional, whether
Mhm.
it's a close friend or colleague or a loved one, about what it is you're going through. And today, versus when I had my first panic attack 20 plus years ago, there wasn't enough resources available and it
Mhm.
wasn't socially as accepted. And as I wrote my book talking about my own panic attacks and my own fears, it was very therapeutic just to get it out there and just talk about it freely. And it helped me understand that some of my triggers that I kept bottled up inside
Mhm.
are now out there in the open. And as I continue to write the book, I talk a lot about my loss of ability with a hearing impairment, loss of a spouse, loss of companionship, being a single dad, all the way from loss of a job and loss of faith. And Keep Those Feet Moving is really a book that is driving behind those in grief,
Mhm.
have them take steps forward, getting them from the why to the where. Remember, action promotes healing. It can be found on our website, keepthosefeetmoving.com,
Mhm.
but also through Amazon. And I would certainly ask anybody who wants to read it and reach out to me can certainly do so on my website, leave a review. I have a lot of different ideas that, like yourself, to help people that are in grief and help them move forward.
Thank you for that. I it's ironic you mentioned about a concert. It's about 2 years ago. A group of my friends and I, we went to a concert over in Charlotte, North Carolina, and I witnessed my friend have a panic attack, but no, none of us knew that this person was dealing with anxiety and stress and different things like that. And so I recognized it as soon. I mean, it was packed in there. And I mean, he was like nervous, he was shaking. And so we finally just had to like remove him from that situation. I just think that many being around that many people just caused him some, some anxiety, right? And so later on, I had a chance to talk with him. And because of the stigmas around mental health, he was afraid to tell us. He was afraid to even reach out for like professional help. So we had a talk, and I'm so thankful that he did listen to me, and he ended up getting some help through counseling. And so it's still step by step, but he's doing so much better. And that's why
Good.
I'm glad that you agreed to come on, because segments like this do help to break the stigmas and barriers around mental health. Yeah, most definitely. I wanted to ask you too, do you have any resonating thoughts that you might want to leave with the viewers who will watch this a little bit later on?
As always, in grief, getting that closure, as I mentioned earlier, is so important
Yeah.
because being able to forgive yourself, forgive
Mhm.
others, and helps you move through. And it's okay to mourn for a season. It's okay to celebrate different milestones. But don't take that mourning and turn it into a lifetime of pain.
Mhm.
We have so many wonderful opportunities to honor and carry on traditions of our loved ones. And if you can't think of one, create one.
Yeah.
And that's the beauty thing. And one of the things that I like to share is we have a lot of loved ones that are spending time in hospice care.
Yeah.
And people don't know how to talk to their loved one. They don't know what to do. And it's just an awkward silence.
Hmm.
What I like to do and recommend is take a favorite storybook that you had as a kid, or maybe your loved one had as a kid, and read it together. Create a new memory, a new tradition. And should the time come, you now have something tangible that you can frame or
Hmm.
even pass on to different family members. And it becomes sort of like an heirloom for
Hmm.
others to have. And that's the importance of that closure. It promotes that healing. It promotes that you're moving on and celebrating your loved one's legacy. Very important. And it goes back to the longer you're in that why, before you get to that where, you've got to have some kind of closure in between to help you cross over.
Well, I want to thank you. This has been a beautiful interview. And I just want to thank you for being very resilient and brave with sharing your story to be a help to others.
Thank you for having me.
All right. I appreciate you. I'll be in contact with you soon.
Thank you.
Take care. Have a great one.
Take care.
Bye
Thank you.
bye.
Bye.